Hey, this is Dave, and I'm here with Andrew for a new episode of BV Weekly. And at the moment, we're both kind of in shock because we just learned right before recording that Brent Hinds, a Mastodon, was killed in a motorcycle accident Wednesday night. And this one really hit me hard. And yeah, it's just horrible news. It comes after kind of a crazy 6 months where it was announced that Brent was no longer a member of Mastodon. And there's been all this drama and with Brent, talking about the other members and saying they're jerks and presumably he got kicked out. But, so it seems like this even more tragically timed rock star story, except it appears he was hit by a car on his motorcycle. He had the right of way. The car reportedly just turned into him, something like that. So it's just crazy. This is not his first motorcycle accident. It's actually at least his third very public motorcycle accident. But Mastodon actually released a statement just now. It says, "We are in a state of unfathomable sadness and grief. Last night, Brent Hinds passed away as a result of a tragic accident. We are heartbroken, shocked, and still trying to process the loss of his creative force with whom we've shared so many triumphs, milestones, and the creation of music that has touched the hearts of so many. Our hearts are with Brent's family, friends, and fans. At this time, we please ask that you respect everyone's privacy during this difficult time."
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was already kind of hitting me hard that he wasn't in the band anymore as of 6 months ago. And I just never would have seen this coming. I mean, it would be crazy regardless, but the timing makes it crazier. And obviously, Brent was such an important part of Mastodon. Like having him not in the band in any scenario felt like a huge loss. I mean, his like soulful singing and awesome guitar riffs are a huge part of what makes Mastodon Mastodon. And then, I mean, to lose such a force within rock and metal like this is really tragic. I mean, for the last 25 years, he's left such an impact. So, yeah, this one really hurts.
Rest in peace, Brent. And let's dedicate this episode to him. But also, before this all happened, we also had some other things planned to talk about. So we are going to get into them now. Most notably this week, a new Deftones album, which we're going to go deep into. But first, I wanted to give a shout out to our other podcast. The Brooklyn Vegan Show, as it is known, has existed for years. The BV Weekly, on this podcast, we're at like 11 or 12 episodes now. So if you search Brooklyn Vegan on any podcast platform, you will see our old Brooklyn Vegan podcast and this new Brooklyn Vegan podcast. The old Brooklyn Vegan podcast, which Andrew often interviewed artists on, is still going. And we just released a new episode this week where Bill Paris of Brooklyn Vegan interviews Steve Mason of the Beta Band, or is it pronounced the Beta Band? You will find out on that episode. So go check that out. And Andrew, you're also in the midst of a new video series that people can watch on the Brooklyn Vegan social media channels that's counting down the top 20 emo albums that turned 20 this year.
Yeah, we're on day 4. Well, today's Thursday. When this goes out on Friday, we'll be on day 5 of 20. It's rolling out in alphabetical order, so my apologies to anybody who is looking for a ranking. But yeah, every day on the Brooklyn Vegan, like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, you can listen to me talk about an emo record from 2005 with some nostalgic music video footage in there. And yeah, it's been really fun. So I hope everybody checks that out. So far, we've rolled out All American Rejects, Move Along, Armor for Sleep, What to Do When You're Dead, Bayside self-titled, Bear vs. Shark, Terror Hawk. And this episode is going live the same day as the Boys Night Out video for Trainwreck. So yeah, if you're into those albums, check it out and stay tuned for what's coming next.
And if you're like, I'm not on social media, there will be a YouTube version when it's all over that contains all of it.
Yes.
Sorry if that was a spoiler alert. But,
nah, it's fine.
And all right, Andrew, Deftones. You wrote a review of the new Deftones album, Private Music, that went up on BrooklynVegan.com yesterday. And something that stuck out to me while I was editing it was, here's a band that we would have grouped with Korn and Linkin Park at one point, and now you wrote in the review that it's become common to group them with Radiohead and Bjork. I'm sure there's still a lot of people who will be caught off guard by that narrative. Meanwhile, Pitchfork's review, which went up hours after ours, also name drops Radiohead and Bjork coincidentally, which is funny and interesting. But the real interesting part is maybe even that a site like Pitchfork reviews this band positively at all in current times. And there are still probably people who don't realize Deftones are Radiohead now, and who might be even confused by why Brooklyn Vegan podcast is talking about the new Deftones album. A confusion that probably wouldn't exist if we were talking about like Nirvana, Weezer, Smashing Pumpkins. So how did this shift happen?
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, I think, so I'm gonna kind of I'll give a little of my personal background with Deftones before I kind of directly answer that. But like, I think, I mean, when I first heard Deftones, when the video for Minerva was like all over MTV, and I definitely was not so much of a new metal person. I mean, I thought the song was good. I mean, also like whether or not Deftones should even be called new metal, I think is totally up for debate. Except for probably their debut record, Adrenaline. But like I think I probably still at that point would have had in my head that things more associated with the new metal crowd was like not my scene or something, and I was more into things that like would be like quote unquote punk, and I use that pretty liberally because I'm definitely talking about some mainstream bands there. But I think it kind of started to become clear to me of like not like that Deftones were just different. Like I was a big Far fan, and I found out that they were associated with Deftones, and Jonah Matranga from Far would do a cover of Be Quiet and Drive, and Glassjaw was a huge band for me, and I would kind of find out like a lot of people would compare them to Deftones, and you would start to just kind of hear how Deftones had influence on bands like, and they Deftones would do a Jawbox cover. So I think there were like a couple things where you could tell that Deftones were dabbling outside of new metal. And also like if I would have really been listening to White Pony, especially, I would have already heard how far and wide they were pulling from. That became clearer and clearer over time. Like Chino Moreno would have like other bands like Team Sleep and Crosses that would pull directly from other kinds of music that were, like pretty far from the metal world. And yeah, I mean, and it's just like you kind of started to gradually. Also, Deftones kept being good, which also I think helped. Like, they would just like when new metal as a era was way over, Deftones were still putting out really great records, and so when you would kind of hear them get name dropped by a band you liked or a friend you had or something, you could listen to their latest record and be impressed. And so basically over time it kind of becomes clearer and clearer that like Deftones are this band that really like defy genre, like Radiohead and Bjork. And I mean, to keep them in the context of heavier, more K-rock music, I would say like Tool and Nine Inch Nails also kind of fall into that category of like, they're these really, really great artistic, creative, ambitious bands that I think any big music fan can see the appeal. But I think people who are maybe listening to tastemakers that were trying to say, one scene is cool and another is not, might still, put Deftones in the wrong camp there. But so yeah, so they kind of would gradually became an influence on a lot of music outside of metal, and in particular these last 5, 6, 7 years or so, I mean, maybe even more than that, but like it's really become clear to a lot of people that Deftones dabbled in shoegaze. I mean, they were hugely influenced by Hum and Failure, who were like kind of American alternative rock bands that pulled from shoegaze, and Deftones kind of took what they were doing and mixed it a little bit with the new metal stuff and brought it to wider audiences. And so like in the early 2010s, when all the cool kids were realizing how great Hum was, it was like Deftones were kind of right there. And as you got these heavier shoegaze bands emerging, like Nothing and Death Heaven and Title Fight going shoegaze and Cloakroom and Super Heaven and all this kind of stuff, people were kind of pointing out like Deftones was doing stuff like this, on like Around the Fur even, like, and especially on White Pony, and on records after that. So yeah, they kind of became this band that because they pulled from shoegaze, mixed it with metal. Then people were like pulling the shoegaze back out of Deftones and kind of making their own shoegaze records that were like a little bit on the heavier side because of Deftones. And so now you get these like rising shoegaze artists like Wisp who name drop Deftones as an influence, and it's like this full circle moment. So yeah, and then TikTok is part of that, like with shoegaze kind of going viral on TikTok and people finding these shoegazy Deftones deep cuts and racking up millions of plays for them because of TikTok. So yeah, a lot of kind of factors have all come together to turn Deftones from what was once the new metal band you're allowed to like into now just like easily one of the most influential rock bands of the 1990s and 2000s and more recent than that too. So
we're talking about their new album, Private Music, which is out today. How does it compare to the classic Deftones albums?
yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing because like I know there's people out there who are just gonna be like, no, like I want to listen to Around the Fur and White Pony, and like I don't care about this stuff. But that's if those people, I know they exist, and I'm fascinated why because like, to me, I'm like, it almost feels like so clearly on par with their classic records, and also like it's produced so well. So they made it with the last record, Ohms, from 2020, was their first in 17 years with Terry Date, who was the person who produced the first, I think, 3 or 4 Deftones records. And he's like a very core collaborator. But the new one is with Nick Raskulinecz, who they did Diamond Eyes in 2010 and the follow-up record Koi no Yokan with. And Nick is like becoming as essential to Deftones as Terry Date, basically, I think. And Nick has this, and not that Terry doesn't have this ability, but Nick certainly has this ability to really help modernize them while also keeping them sounding like Deftones. And I'm sure the members of the band, just their songwriting is doing that too. But it's like, there are some elements on the late 90s and early 2000s Deftones records that sound a little outdated now. And the new record, it just sounds so modern. Like with all this current music influenced by Deftones, it's like if you didn't know any better, you could just mistake this for some rising new band, except it also there's nothing like the real thing. So it's like it's still so much better. So yeah, I to me, like, I mean, I think I'll say they might never top White Pony. I mean, that's just gonna go down as like one of those records, but I think it's like just about as good, as what they were making at that point.
So is this new one new metal? Is it shoegaze?
Very funny question. Yeah, it's I mean both. It's so funny, right? Because like I think there's a lot of Deftones fans who are just like shoegaze, like what are you like? And then also shoegaze fans who were kind of like Deftones, So like no, it's not like definitionally shoegaze. It doesn't sound like a ride record, but there's definitely a lot of shoegaze on the record. And also it does have their most new metal song in a long time. It's called Cut Hands, which I think the reason my brain like had a second there is because there's also a band called that. So I was like, I'm not like confusing them with the band, right? But yeah, the song Cut Hands is like the most overtly new metal Deftones song in a while. So it really, I feel like it really has everything. Like if you're coming to this record as a shoegaze TikTok person that got into Deftones atmospheric deep cuts, I think you'll be very pleased. And if you're coming to this record like wishing they would sound a little bit like Adrenaline again, then you'll also be pleased. So it's kind of, yeah.
It's important to also point out that even when you say now in 2025 that that's their most new metal song on the album, even that is not a negative thing.
Totally. Yeah, like new metal has been like fully reclaimed. There's a lot of new bands within like hardcore and metalcore that like overtly reference new metal, and people are down with that. Like Code Orange have collaborated with Slipknot and stuff, and toured with Deftones. And also, yeah, I mean, like new metal's like all the rage again. Like we're all excited for the System of a Down tour this year, who are always like the other new metal band you're allowed to like. But even outside of that, like Slipknot is like respected now. Korn is respected now. And like always should have been.
So we already know and love the 2 singles, My Mind is a Mountain and Milk of the Madonna. But for people who haven't heard the album yet, like myself, the full album, what do you think is the sleeper hit?
I want to say I Think About You All the Time, which is kind of this like power ballad, alt metal, alt rock song that like it kind of reminds me of like Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. It has like a very subtle acoustic guitar in the background. I particularly love that move when it's like really big heavy electric guitars and like a strummy acoustic beneath them that like you might even miss if you're not listening on headphones. But yeah, it's very, very Smashing Pumpkins, I think, who are also a band that I mean, you mentioned them earlier, but it's like they were perceived very differently from Deftones, but I think they had a lot of similar DNA. They were both these like rock bands in the 90s that liked metal and also liked My Bloody Valentine. So like there's shared DNA for a long time, but in more recent years, like Chino has sung on stage with the Pumpkins a couple times at least. So now they're finally peers basically. But yeah, I think that is one of the best Smashing Pumpkins-esque songs in a while. And it's cool that it's from Deftones because they've always been able to do like a Pumpkinsy thing. And I think if you are kind of like the more like, oh, I'm now curious about Deftones because of all this shoegaze talk, then I think this one would be really up your alley. Like the singles are great, but they're definitely like metal bangers. So this is like kind of a different side.
Any songs on the album surprise you?
Cut Hands, the new metal song. I didn't think that was coming.
All right. Any final words on the Deftones album?
Oof. I mean, I feel like I could talk about it all day. It's just so good. It's just, I think it just blows my mind. The thing about Deftones that I think impresses me the most is that they have become influential in a way that no one, I think, including the members of the band, could have ever predicted. And they fully embrace all of the influence they now have on all these different types of music while staying true to themselves. Like you mentioned Radiohead and Bjork, and another name drop I put in their review is The Cure, who I think is a really, really close parallel here. And I think Deftones of all bands would know that because in the mid 2000s, when both new metal and pop punk and post hardcore and stuff, all that kind of stuff was like really big, and The Cure were influential on all that stuff, they could have so easily like turned their noses up at it and been like, oh, like we don't like this stuff. But no, Robert Smith was like into it. Like, and when MTV had their Icon series, which would like celebrate classic bands, they had one for The Cure, and Deftones, Blink-182, and AFI, and a less remembered band called Razorlight were the bands that paid tribute to The Cure. And you know, Robert Smith sang on a Blink-182 record that year. The year earlier. The Cure's self-titled record from that year was made with Ross Robinson, who produced like all the new metal bands and also like post-hardcore bands like Glassjaw and At the Drive-In and Blood Brothers. And Robert Smith has since repped Deftones many times. So I feel like, you know, maybe they learned from The Cure. But in any case, I think what The Cure did and now Deftones are doing is they're figuring out this way of being like, oh, we can like really embrace these other styles of music that we've somehow influenced, even if they don't quite sound like us, while also being true to ourselves. And they're making records that just like, it's like they're like, you know, you asked how it compares to the classics, and it's like a funny question to me because part of me wants to be like, it almost doesn't matter. The record is great now. I feel the same about The Cure's new album from last year. It's incredible. And I don't even think you need to know The Cure's history. You can just love the record. I think same thing here. If this could be your first Deftones record, and it could also be your 10th. Like, and that's crazy to me. I think that's really impressive.
And so we're talking about the artists that Deftones have influenced. So I thought, let's jump into a few items that, if you are feeling Deftones mania right now, are also kind of relevant things that you might want to care about. Starting with number one, a band who we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, Fleshwater, whose album 2000 In Search of the Endless Sky is coming out on September 5th. And as discussed on previous episodes, we think the singles are great so far. This is a Deftones influenced shoegazy band from Boston who even toured with Deftones last year after exploding in popularity. Or was it this year? I don't know.
It was, yeah, earlier this year.
This year.
I saw him at the Garden in April.
Right. Originally part of the hardcore scene and framed as a vain side project, Fleshwater actually still signed to the label Closed Casket, which is really cool of them because I just feel like they have had to have had other offers. and they were just even announced as one of the highest bands on the 2026 flyer for Hardcore Fest FYA. We'll talk about that later. And they also have an amazing tour coming up, first with Angel Dust and then with Chat Pile. The Chat Pile date hits the segment of the tour, hits New York. I definitely hope to be at that show. Number 2, earlier this month, we talked about the new Wisp album, the quickly rising shoegaze artist that some are classifying as new gaze. But we also compared classic shoegaze like My Bloody Valentine and Slowdive, who they toured with. Wisp went from TikTok to a major label in just one song, and their debut full length came out earlier this month. If you haven't heard it yet, you can also catch Wisp on those upcoming System of a Down shows, which Deftones are also opening 2 nights of. The Quanic album is out today. That's Quannnic. That's 3 N's. Quanic, yet another shoegazy band who shot to fame thanks to a song on TikTok. And now, like Wisp, have even gone on tour with the actual Slowdive, which is when I got a chance to see them. They were good. They've also been compared to Deftones and cited them as an influence. And but they also live in that kind of hyperpop adjacent world with their label mates Jane Remover, who they've also toured with. Also this month, we got a new album by No Joy, a multi-genre shoegaze artist who I don't think have any TikTok fame, but who we've been fans of for many years. And their new album that they made with Fire Tools is really great, Screamo part included. If you haven't heard that yet, definitely check that out. Lastly, I don't know where No Joy or the Deftones might land on our end of year list yet, but shoegazy rock is definitely dominating the top of our list regardless, with Greet Death on the more indie rock side of things and Deaf Heaven, who you did mention earlier, on the more metal side. Both of those albums from this year definitely still in top spots on my end of your list anyway.
Definitely in heavy rotation for me too.
Yeah.
I also like I hate to admit, but I've succumbed to, well, I don't hate to admit it. You know what? Forget it. I'm proud. I make long playlists and I put those on too, as well as still loving albums. But Country Girl by Greet Death, whenever it comes on, my just like throwing it on whatever I'm listening to type playlist. Well, that's like one of the 5 best songs of the year, I think. Not really a shoegazy song, but
yeah, I mean, I can get with that.
Yeah. Also, I just have to
you
say,
just like it because
it
says country in the title.
Yeah, right. It fits with my current interest in country, which we'll talk more about in a second. But I also just have to say, for anybody who likes screamo tidbits, since you mentioned there's like a little screamo on the No Joy record, Fire Tools, who produced it, is in a past life was a member of the screamo band Age 16. So yeah, real screamo cred on that record.
And you got to shout out the new World Is album.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of songs that are Deftonesy, Dissolving on the new World Is record is, I think, one of the best Deftonesy songs I've heard this year. So definitely coming the same week as the Deftones record. It's good timing for that. But yeah, I mean, there's so much new music out this week. I feel like it's like, I mean, Deftones does kind of tower over a lot of stuff, but like we could have easily done probably a full episode on the World Is record, which is crazy. So I'll just talk about it. But it's like, yeah, I mean, even talking about screamo cred, like the World Is way before they were kind of at the peak of this like emo revival craze of the early 2010s. Like they came out of the Connecticut hardcore scene, also the Connecticut screamo scene. And that's always been in there. Like if you listen to, there's definitely like songs throughout their career where you're like, oh, they're a little metal on this track, or moments at their live shows that get that way. But this new album, Dreams of Being Dust, is like a full on like pivot to hardcore, metalcore, alternative metal, also like indie prog, which they've flirted with, especially on their last record a lot. And it all still sounds like the World Is. And it's a totally insane pivot, I think, for like, even though I say that like I just want to be, what I want to say is like, they are not just latching on to, they are, like the heavy music is in their DNA. It's not like a new thing for them, but still them making this record, it came out of nowhere for me. I don't think I ever would have predicted. Like they've got members of Full of Hell and End and Church Tongue on there. And it's just like, there are like straight up metalcore songs, and the World Is do it like only the World Is can. It's really, really cool record.
What else is out this week?
Yeah, well, you mentioned country, so I got to say one of my favorite albums of the year so far. I think I'll just say it. It's in my top three right now. Is Greg Freeman's sophomore album "Burn Over." I did a review of this one on the site too. It's I think on his 2022 debut album, I Looked Out, which came out on a small DIY label called Bud Tapes and was like a sleeper hit, word of mouth kind of thing. He was constantly compared to Jason Molina from Songs of Haya, Magnolia Electric Company. And he definitely cites Molina as an influence. Like, that's not an accident. But similar to MJ Lenderman, who was also compared to Molina a lot early in his career, that's kind of I guess that would be like the starting point for Greg. But on this new album, it's like there's still the Molina in there. You could definitely still compare it to MJ Lenderman, but like he's fully developed his own voice. Like, there's also parts that remind me of like Pavement. There's like a real bar rock song that could totally be the Replacements. The last track on the record is this like really like experimental like post rock Americana song that you could totally hear Wilco doing in their like Jim O'Rourke era, like A Ghost Is Born kind of stuff. So it's just like a lot of different stuff at once, and the songs are just so good. Like, I as a lyricist, he is like one of my favorites right now. He's got this really great ability to set the scene of just like Northeast non-urban America, and then just like hit you with these one-liners that are like just really like just tug at like human emotion. It's just, I don't know, he's so good at that kind of thing, and the hooks are so catchy, and there's jammy parts. Like, he's from Burlington, Vermont, so there's definitely some of that Burlington jam scene in there. But it's like he does all these things, and I almost feel like I made a similar point about Deftones, but it's like I think you can come to Greg Freeman if whichever one of those things that you're most a fan of is the thing you're going to hear the most. Like, I've seen people I know who are more like traditional indie rock fans have been like, oh, it's kind of like Pavement. People I know who are more into pop are like, oh, the choruses are so catchy. People I know who are like more into country are like, oh, I love the pedal steel. But then it's like the people who don't like the other elements I've never heard anyone be turned off. It's just like this perfect kind of like mirror into your own music taste. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I hope I'm not overhyping it, but this one really hits me. So
Yeah, I can't wait to hear it. It feels like an embarrassment of riches with this coming so soon after Ryan Davis. But I was about to list some other albums, and I just realized that's the entire indie country list. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, this year's been like with Greg's record, Ryan Davis record, Flory, the upcoming Wednesday album. I mean, there's going to be a lot of indie country on a lot of year end lists this year. I think. I feel like it's like if like, I mean, it's not an exact parallel to like Nirvana, because it's definitely been a slow burn. But I think MJ Lenderman's record from last year, like you could make the argument it's like the Nevermind of this whole little thing. So if it's like now we're in like 1992, where you're getting like so much of it. And I'm not saying people are doing it because someone else is doing it, but it just feels like we're in that rush now of like, oh, give me more like this. And luckily for us, a lot of great artists are doing that.
Yeah, I got to check that out. I should have said this. I am very excited about that new The World Is album. If you don't know who The World Is, you might also know them as The World Is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die, full name.
Totally forgot. I'm so used to never saying their name that I forgot we didn't actually say it.
Yeah, and also in the heavy realm, a new Innumerable Forms album out this week you review. That's for metal. I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah. Do you, off the top of your head, how many related bands can you think of for members of Innumerable
I'm not
Forms?
doing that game. But yes, I do love that game. Innumerable Forms, most notably, maybe I'm bad at this game because then I can't remember names. What's the Tumult related?
Dream Unending.
Dream Unending. So there's a super relevant related band, Dream Unending.
Sumerlands.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
All right, I'll do it. Genocide Pact, Power Trip, Iron Lung. But yeah, and then obviously or not obviously, but so many different types of music from those bands. And this one is like strictly like 90s style death doom, and they do it really well. Meanwhile, one of the bigger stories this week is Earl Sweatshirt, because like a lot of people didn't even think his album was real. It was like, so I'll kind of recap the story, but like last Friday he quote threw a listening party for the album in LA. The album is apparently called Live Laugh Love, which is hilarious. And I think even from that alone, like what I didn't, I'm in New York, but like I read Complex's review of the LA event, and they were like, the DJ kept making comments that was like, he really named the album that. Zach Fox, who's a comedian and rapper, was there filming, so I think people were wondering if they were just part of like an elaborate Zach Fox prank. And so Earl had an imposter come out instead of him for this event, and he was never there, and people were just like, is this whole thing a joke, or is there really an Earl Sweatshirt record called Live Laugh Love? And there really is, and it's out today, and it's great. It sounds like everything Earl's done pretty much since some rap songs, like the kind of hazy beats and surrealist lyrics. So yeah, funny story leading up to another great Earl record.
It's been another big year for Odd Future in general, right? Tyler is the biggest artist in the world. You can't even compare him to anybody else in Odd Future. But now Earl is back with a new album, and maybe even more rare, Sid recently released new music and is like on some notable tours.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about the Odd Future of like 2010, 11, and then like where everybody's at now. And like Frank Ocean is now like this elusive, like if he ever decides to come out of hibernation and make a record, it's going to be like Brian Wilson finally releasing Smile, you know? Like,
yeah, and one of the biggest albums of this month, especially if the 9.0 Pitchfork review is to be believed, is that Dijon album, which right in their review they say, you know, this owes a lot to Frank Ocean. So more his relevance, whether with or without a new album, is as big as ever.
I think we're finally officially living in the Odd Future.
Boom.
There's so many more records out this week that we like that we just can't talk about them all. So I'm just going to rattle them off quick and we can get to other stuff. But Hot Mulligan, one of the best emo pop punk bands, are back with a great record. Big X The Plug. I haven't gotten a chance to hear this album yet. I'm going to listen first thing in the morning. But it's like, he's this Texas rapper and he's been doing these country collaborations, like one with Bailey Zimmerman that you've probably heard even if you don't realize it, and a couple with Shabuzi. And both of those guests and other country singers are on this record. So I'm just assuming the whole thing is going to be like a rap country hybrid, and I'm excited to hear it. Wolf Alice's new record is out. It's really cool. It's like a very modern take on like a lot of different 70s rock styles. Recommended if you like Kate Bush, Fleetwood Mac, David Bowie. Ghostface Killah's Supreme Clientele 2, the sequel to the most loved Ghostface record from 25 years ago, is finally here, and Ghostface is still an incredible rapper. So record rocks. Those are all covered in notable releases on BrooklynVegan.com. And then over in Indie Basement, Bill talks about the new Water From Your Eyes, which is like another one of probably like one of the biggest indie rock records of this week. And it's like Nate from This Is Lorelei and Rachel Brown are Water From Your Eyes. And this is Lorelei's big break last year. So I think there's like even more, even though Water From Your Eyes was like already a thing, now it's like there's even more attention. Super Chunk, always reliably.
That is a crazy development though. That is, because it felt like a few years ago, felt like Water From Your Eyes were so hyped. And to even, there's a maybe a Fleshwater vein thing going on. Anyway,
it's also like an MJ Lenderman Wednesday thing, I think.
That's true.
It's like they're like kind of like having a back and forth with themselves, you know, like it was MJ Lenderman's year last year. Now it's Wednesday's year. Now it feels like it's going to be Water From Your Eyes year. So yeah, Super Chunk are back with like a reliably great record. Tops, Blake Mills and Pino Palladino, Hunks and His Punks, Adrian Sherwood, Hand Habits, Winter, and Tullycraft are all covered in Indie Basement by Bill. There's also a lot of really great songs / exciting album announcements from the week. Should we hop into those?
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we've been doing this podcast for, like you said, I think this is our 12th episode. And I think this might be like the most embarrassment of musical riches since we've started. Like I'm self-conscious that we're talking too much about just like new releases. It's like that, but they're totally dominating right now. But two big comebacks this week, both of which are like cult classic comebacks. Merchandise, who were once like the buzziest post-punk band of the 2010s, who were gone for a while, released their first new song in 9 years, and they say a new album is, quote, coming soon. The song sounds a lot like the Smiths, and also it sounds like merchandise, and it's very good. Um, an even longer awaited thing is Good Luck announced their first album in 14 years, which is also crazy timing with the new Algernon Cadwallader announcement. Their first record in 14 years, like Algernon, of course, being like the kings of emo revival, but Good Luck are sort of a more cultishly loved and influential band within both emo revival and folk punk and indie rock. Like, very hard to pin them down. And Joe from Algernon produced this record. So, and Algernon and Good Luck shared so many stages back in the day. So I think, like, I just hope that all the people excited for Algernon are also excited for Good Luck, because it's equally exciting. Not to mention Empire announced their first tour since breaking up this week. So it's like good week for emo revival fans. And then Joyce Manor, I guess coming right out of that, is also released a very Smith sounding song called All My Friends Are So Depressed. It's Joyce Manor have definitely flirted with Smithsy stuff before, and this is one of their Smithsiest. Barry from the band also said the lyrics are, quote, kind of my take on what I imagine Lana Del Rey lyrics are like. So listen and make of that what you will. A couple more on that Odd Future note. Steve Lacy, who, like, it's, I think because of Sid and the internet, is kind of like at least Odd Future adjacent, revealed plans for a new album called Oh Yeah and a new Rolling Stone feature. And his new single Nice Shoes is this very cool kind of off-kilter pop song that has like hazy vibes, sputtering beats. I'm excited for more of that. Listeners of this podcast have heard us talk about, the kind of hardcore alt rock crossover stuff, and one of the best bands, one of the most underrated bands in that space, is Public Opinion. But they are one degree of separation from both Military Gun and Drug Church. Drug Church's Patrick Hinland sings on their new single, which is off their first EP for Side One Dummy. And they announced a tour with both Military Gun and Liquid Mike this week. So if you're into Military Gun and Drug Church and haven't checked out Public Opinion, check out that song, go to that tour. Maybe you'll run into Doja Cat at one of those shows. Meanwhile, Micaiah McCraven, who's like one of our favorite current jazz musicians, announced 4 EPs and released a single from each one. Australian punk legends The Saints announced that their final album, recorded before vocalist Chris Bailey's death, is coming. 2 songs are out now. And last but absolutely not least, Bar Italia announced their new record, Some Like It Hot. And their new single, Fundraiser, is, to quote Bill, easily the most immediate hooky song they've ever given us. It's he compares it to XTC circa 1979. So if that's up your alley, check that out. And
I do need to check that out, because that review really speaks to me. For some reason, I have not clicked play yet, but like that first Bar Italia album, all right, fact check if it was actually their first, but like their first that I knew, or when they came about on Matador, I was completely addicted to that album. I listened to it so many times. But then the second album, that kind of didn't happen. So I'm ready to go back to that.
Yeah, I also feel that description makes me excited to hear more. So what else happened this week, Dave?
We already talked about extremely huge, sad loss for the metal world with Brent Hinds. And just a few days before this, we got really other sad metal news. Swedish Melodeath pioneers At the Gates have revealed that they have a new album on the way. But with that announcement, they also shared some sad news about the health of legendary vocalist Thomas Lindberg, who is apparently hospitalized following a nearly 2-year secret battle with a rare mouth cancer that has already led to a major surgery and radiation. And the new statement says that things weren't looking great, so now also chemotherapy. But in somewhat good news, the vocals for the new album were recorded the day before he went into surgery to make sure he could do it. And along with this new statement from the band, they released a statement from Thomas that was actually written months ago that talks more about all that. And I don't know, we're just hoping for another update that is much more positive than this one. We're thinking about you, Thomas. So also, Shudder to Think reunited for some shows earlier this year. We were excited about that. And then they showed up on like Riot Fest, and now they've announced their first kind of tour in over a decade. So check out those dates. Maxwell's, the legendary Hoboken, New Jersey bar and club, closed in 2013. I saw many great shows there. and they hosted a who's who of punk, indie, alternative rock in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, are getting a documentary made about it. It's titled No Backstage at Maxwell's, directed by Paul Rackman. How do you say that? Who did American Hardcore? Great documentary. The movie
and
will
great book.
And great book. The movie will feature interviews with the club's owners and bookers, acts that played there like Bob Mould, the Feelies, and Yo La Tengo, who famously used to do their annual Hanukkah shows there, 8 nights, which now had to move to Bowery Ballroom. A trailer for that document is out now. Speaking of bands who played Maxwell's, The Replacements, who in 2017 released a live album recorded at Maxwell's in 1986, have announced a deluxe edition reissue of their classic 1984 album, Let It Be. That will include lots of unreleased material from the Let It Be sessions, an unreleased 28-song live album recorded in 1984, and more. As mentioned earlier, Florida Hardcore Fest FYA's lineup is out. Always an exciting announcement for the January Hardcore Fest that starts the next year and whose lineup announcement comes soon after Sound and Fury happens. FYA 2026 will include reunion sets from Turmoil and Excessive Force, a set from California hardcore band Forced Order, who weren't gone super long, but reunited for Sound and Fury and now appear on this lineup. It's also got sets from Hatebreed, Drain, Gorilla Biscuits, the previously mentioned Fleshwater, Haywire, Marauder, Mind Force, Missing Link, Gridiron, Start Today, and many more.
I would just add that I am so excited that Turmoil are playing again, and I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that that's not their only show in 2026, because that record, that 1999 record, is like one of the best metalcore albums ever, I think.
Anyone who wants to see them should definitely go to FYA, but it usually does happen that once you see a band reunite on the FYA lineup, we typically do get some more shows, so that's cool. And like even here, you saw Forced Order showed up on Sound and Fury. Sure enough, FYA flyer as well. And an even more surprising reunion, the Red Crayola are reuniting for their first show in 10 years to open for Cap'n Jazz at LA's Hollywood Palladium alongside Rainer Maria and Ceremony offshoot Anthony Family. For Rainer Maria, it's one of 4 West Coast dates they'll play with Cap'n Jazz. Garbage have said that this upcoming North American headline tour will be their last North American headline tour, for what it's worth. They're not saying they're done playing shows, but some of the cities they're playing on this upcoming tour, it may be the last time they ever visit them. A band who will never reunite are the Beatles, but we are once again getting a Beatles documentary series on Disney Plus just in time for Thanksgiving weekend, this time an expanded edition of the Beatles anthology docuseries, which was announced alongside a new anthology book and box set, the latter of 2, which you could pick up in the BV shop, along with an exclusive vinyl variant of that new Superchunk album that's out today. It is very cool looking. Go get that, as well as the forthcoming Military Gun album and much, much more. Visit shop.brooklynvegan.com to pick up those records and much more. And of course, always visit brooklynvegan.com. And I think we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Dave and I will be back every Friday morning with new episodes of BV Weekly. And in between the episodes, you can always get much more from us at brooklynvegan.com, on all of our social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can pick up records from us at shop.brooklynvegan.com. And if you like what you hear, tell your friends about us, subscribe to the show, give us a good rating. All that little stuff goes a really long way. It really helps us a lot, and we really appreciate it. Thanks so much to Joe D'Agostino from Cymbals E Guitars and Empty Country for the great theme song. Our mix engineer, Nick Gray. Thank you again, and see you next time.